I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until the table went quiet. My name's Felix. I'm 34, single, and after a long, exhausting climb through the corporate grind, pulling late nights, missing holidays, grinding through office politics, I finally got promoted to Senior Director of Marketing at a major tech firm in Chicago. It wasn't just a job title to me. It was years of quiet sacrifice finally paying off. I'd never been the loudest or flashiest in the room, but I showed up, delivered results, and made it impossible for them not to notice. When the offer came through, I sat in my apartment for a solid 10 minutes, just staring at the screen, barely blinking. I called my dad first, and we shared a rare, proud silence on the phone. Then I called my mom. I should have known better. Growing up, my mom, Eleanor, was the kind of person who made everything about her. Subtly, not in the overt, screaming in a grocery store way that ends up on viral TikToks. No, her version of entitlement was quieter, more insidious. Like poison in tea, sweet at first, bitter after. She was the master of undermining praise with concern. If I got an A, she'd ask why it wasn't an A+. If I won an award, she'd wonder if the judges were just being generous. And yet, somehow, she always made me feel like I owed her everything. I raised you to be strong, she'd say. Don't expect the world to pat you on the back. When I was younger, I thought she was just trying to prepare me for life. Now I see it differently. I invited her to the dinner because, even after everything, I still wanted her to be proud of me. The restaurant was my pick, a rooftop place downtown with a view of the skyline, and a menu so pricey the water had a cover charge. I invited a handful of colleagues who'd become friends over the years, a few mentors who'd guided me, and my parents, divorced now, but civil in public. My dad came, quietly proud, sitting 2 seats down from me. My mom came, late, dressed to kill, perfume strong enough to fog up the glasses. Dinner started well. I ordered a round of drinks, made a small toast, something light about hard work and good people. Everyone clapped. My boss, Julia, gave me a brief but kind speech about how I'd earned every bit of this. I could feel my face heating up. I'm not great with public praise, but it felt good. Then my mom cleared her throat. I just think, she began, fingers toying with the stem of her wine glass. Sometimes companies make surprising decisions. I mean, it's wonderful, of course, Felix. But are you sure this wasn't one of those? What do they call them? Pity promotions? You know how companies are always trying to look good these days. Silence. A heavy, drop a pin, no one knows where to look kind of silence. My fork was halfway to my mouth, and I froze there midair. My boss stared at her like she'd just dropped a dead bird on the table. My closest colleague, Evan, opened his mouth, then shut it again. Even my dad blinked hard and looked down at his plate. I swallowed, set the fork down gently, and looked her in the eye. No, Mom. This wasn't pity. I earned it. She smiled, tilted her head like I was being defensive. Of course, dear. I'm just saying, don't let it go to your head. Some people get these titles, and next thing you know, they think they're CEOs. She laughed. Alone. I paid for my meal. Half the table still hadn't even finished eating. I stood up, apologized to the group, and walked out. My dad followed me to the elevator, but didn't say anything. I think he understood. I didn't cry until I got back to my car. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, my mom's been on a campaign. She's called my cousins, my aunt, even my dad's side of the family, telling everyone I humiliated her at a public event, that I'm too sensitive, and that I stormed off over a harmless joke. She's leaving out the part where she called my life's biggest achievement a handout. I haven't responded to a single call or text. Not from her, not from the relatives she's dragged into it. But the messages are coming faster now. Guilt-tripping ones. You know your mother loves you. She was just trying to keep you humble. You're being dramatic, Felix. And then, last night, I got a message from my younger sister. Just one line. She's planning something for Thanksgiving. Just a heads up. I don't know what that means yet, but I have a feeling this isn't over. Not even close. I didn't respond to my sister's message right away. She's planning something for Thanksgiving, she'd said. I read it, reread it, and put my phone down like it was something that could burn me. The last thing I wanted was more drama. But the problem with people like my mom is they never let silence speak for itself. They fill it, twist it, weaponize it. By week 3, I'd officially gone no contact. It wasn't some grand declaration. No email, no text saying, I'm cutting you off. I just stopped replying. And the silence was loud. Louder than I expected. She didn't like that. Narcissists never do. It started with guilt. Voicemails that began warm. Felix, sweetie, I miss you. Then veered passive-aggressive by the second sentence. I know you're probably still sulking, but I wanted to tell you I found that old baby photo you loved. Remember the one where you're smiling? You should look in the mirror sometime and try it again. Click. Then came the flying monkeys. Cousin Emily messaged me a week before Thanksgiving. Your mom told me what happened. Honestly, I think she's just trying to keep you grounded. You've always been a bit touchy. Grounded. Right. My aunt called too. Left a long message about bridges and family. That one stung. Aunt Karen had always been the only person in our extended family who truly saw me as I was, not as my mother's warped reflection of me. But now she sounded like someone who'd only heard one side of the story and was too comfortable with it. I didn't even bother correcting them. If they were calling to tell me how I felt, there was no point in trying to explain how deeply it hurt. But the real gut punch came on Thanksgiving morning. I'd already told my dad I wasn't coming. He understood, offered to stop by and bring me leftovers later that evening. But at 10:42 a.m., I got a message that changed everything. It wasn't from my mom. It was from Julia, my boss. It just said, "Hey, happy Thanksgiving. Thought you'd want to know that Eleanor sent us all a very interesting email last night. You okay?" My stomach dropped. I immediately checked my work inbox. And there it was. From Eleanor Kane to Julia Waters, Evan Brooks, Anna Lee, Samantha DeWitt. CC, Felix Kane. Subject, a mother's perspective. The email started with, "I hope this doesn't come across as overstepping," which is always the preamble to something inappropriate. Then she launched into a 2-paragraph reflection on my promotion. Said she was proud of me but worried I was burning bridges and developing a superiority complex. She thanked them for giving Felix a chance and said it meant so much that companies were finally learning to look beyond social awkwardness when making leadership decisions. Social awkwardness. I felt like I'd been slapped. My ears rang. She wrapped it all up with a backhanded plea. Please continue to support him. He's not always the easiest, but I do believe in his potential. Julia hadn't responded to her. None of them had, but they had all seen it. Every word. I felt the anger building slowly, like a cold tide rising in my chest. Not hot rage. No, this was something colder. Quieter. A kind of betrayal you can't scream about because there's no one left to listen. It's the betrayal that hits when you realize your own mother is actively sabotaging you in the one place you'd finally carved out your own peace. I didn't reply to the email. Not yet. I just sat there, reading it over and over, trying to decide what hurt more, the content or the fact that she thought this was normal. Later that day, my dad came by with 2 containers of food. Turkey, mashed potatoes, stuffing, our usual. He didn't stay long, just looked at me and said, "I saw the email." I nodded. "She's getting worse," he added. I didn't say anything. Before he left, he patted my shoulder. "You didn't deserve any of this. I know that doesn't fix it, but I see it. For what it's worth." That was the closest he'd ever come to choosing a side. But the fallout was just beginning. The following Monday, I walked into work dreading the tension. To my surprise, Julia pulled me aside mid-morning and closed her office door behind us. "I just want to make sure you're all right," she said. I nodded. Embarrassed, mostly. She smiled sympathetically. "Felix, I don't want you to be embarrassed. That email was not okay. I've been in this business a long time, and I've seen all kinds of helicopter parents. But this was something else." She paused, then added, "You don't have to explain. Just know your work speaks for itself." Loudly. It meant more than she probably realized. But it didn't stop there. 2 days later, Samantha, a junior analyst who joined my team 3 months earlier, mentioned something in passing that froze me mid-step. "Your mom's LinkedIn post was wild, by the way." I turned slowly. "What post?" She hesitated, eyes widening. "Oh, I thought you knew. She tagged our company page." I didn't say anything. Just walked back to my desk, logged in, and found it immediately. There it was. A long-winded public post titled "A Mother's Gratitude." It started innocently enough, with generic praise about how the world needs more compassionate workplaces, then subtly turned the knife. She wrote about how I'd struggled socially as a child, how I was always a little different, and how grateful she was that a company had finally taken a chance on me. Then she wrote this. I used to worry Felix wouldn't make it in the corporate world. But I'm so grateful there are leaders who see potential where others might see challenge. Thank you for believing in my son, even when he doesn't make it easy. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I flagged the post, reported it. But of course, by then, people had already seen it, liked it, commented. Co-workers, old college friends, distant family, all congratulating her for her honest and touching post, not realizing it was a carefully constructed PR hit job disguised as pride. I didn't sleep that night. My brain wouldn't shut off. I kept thinking back to that dinner. The moment the table went quiet. Her smirk. The way she looked so satisfied when I stood up and left, like she'd won something. And maybe she had. Because now, she'd taken my one safe space, my work, and planted her flag right in the middle of it. The worst part? I think she genuinely believed she was being loving. That this was what support looked like. That passive aggression wrapped in sentimentality was still sentiment. But I knew better now. This wasn't love. This was control. And if Thanksgiving was her first move, I had a sinking feeling Christmas would be worse. Then my sister called. Not a text. A real call. That alone told me it was serious. Felix, she said, voice low. She's telling people you had a breakdown. That you walked out of dinner because you're unstable. I sat down on the edge of my bed. She told Grandma you're on medication. That you're lashing out because of some mental health episode. She's building a whole narrative. I stayed quiet. She also invited Julia to Christmas dinner. That got my attention. What? She somehow got her email. Said she wanted to make it up to her. That you were overreacting and that she hoped Julia could see the real you at a wholesome family gathering. I'm guessing she thinks that'll fix everything. I laughed. A short, bitter sound. Or humiliate me even more. There was a pause. I don't know what her endgame is, my sister said, voice soft. But she's not done. You need to be careful. I hung up and sat in silence for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and created a new folder. The title? Receipts. Because if she wanted to play games, I could play too. But smarter, slower, and when the time came, louder. I didn't realize how far I'd let her get into my head until I found myself hesitating before opening emails from coworkers. That's how deep the damage had burrowed. I'd stare at my inbox every morning, wondering if someone else had seen another post, another message, another poisoned compliment wrapped in motherly concern. The anxiety wasn't loud. It was a low hum under everything, making even the quietest days feel heavy. And for the first time in years, I started dreading Mondays. I was still performing, technically. Reports filed on time. Team meetings ran smoothly, projects delivered. But I wasn't present. I was operating on autopilot, like I was waiting for something else to drop. Another message. Another concerned email about my mental health. Another post framing me as the broken son her maternal patients had endured. I stopped going out with coworkers after work. I skipped the Thursday happy hour Julia organized, even though I'd helped set it up 2 months prior. I could feel my team pulling back, not because they didn't like me, but because I was pulling back first. That's how self-sabotage works when it's dressed like self-protection. One night, about a week before Christmas, I sat on the floor of my living room in sweatpants, staring at an untouched microwave dinner and half a bottle of wine I hadn't opened. The apartment was too clean, too quiet. And I realized something that made my throat tighten. She'd gotten to me. She hadn't just embarrassed me in front of my colleagues. She'd succeeded. I was shrinking, fading, doing the work for her by making myself smaller, quieter, more apologetic. I was letting her win. And that thought, it snapped something in me. I didn't cry. I didn't flip a table. I just stood up, tossed the cold food into the trash, and grabbed my laptop. I opened the receipts folder I'd started. At the time, it was just screenshots, the email, the LinkedIn post, some texts my sister had forwarded. But that night, I decided to make it more than that. I created a document. I titled it, Pattern of Undermining Behavior, Eleanor Kane. I started writing. It wasn't revenge, not yet. It was clarity, a record, a way to remind myself that I wasn't crazy, that this had been going on for years, that it didn't start with that dinner. It started when I was 12, and she told me I was too weird to ever be liked by girls. When I was 16 and got into the regional science fair, and she said, that's cute, but colleges don't care about that stuff. When I got into my safety school with a partial scholarship, and she said, don't act like you're better than the rest of us just because someone felt sorry for you. Each time, she'd say it with a smile, a tone like she was doing me a favor, like humility was a gift and she was the only one honest enough to give it to me. I wrote for 3 hours straight, and when I was done, I didn't feel healed, but I felt awake. The next day, I went into the office early, sat down with Julia, told her the whole story, carefully, calmly. Not the gory emotional details, but the facts. The email, the post, the Christmas dinner invite. My concern that my personal life was bleeding into my professional reputation in ways I couldn't control. Julia listened the entire time without interrupting. When I was finished, she leaned forward. Felix, I appreciate you telling me, and I want you to hear this from me directly. We don't judge you based on anything your mother says or posts. You've earned your role here. Every single person on this team respects you because you've earned that respect, not because we feel sorry for you, not because someone told us to. I didn't realize how tightly I'd been holding my jaw until it loosened. She continued, but if you want to take time off around the holidays, I fully support that. You've been carrying a lot. You deserve a break. I thanked her, and I meant it, but I didn't take the time off. Not yet. Instead, I started rebuilding. I reached out to my team and invited them out for lunch, just a casual thing. I framed it as my treat for an amazing Q4, and they showed up. We laughed, swapped stories, and by the end, I felt something shift. They weren't walking on eggshells anymore. They were joking with me again. I wasn't just their cautious boss anymore. I was Felix again. I reconnected with Evan, the closest friend I had at the office. We got a drink after work that Friday. I told him everything over a shared plate of wings and the worst bar fries in Chicago. He listened, quiet but fierce, and when I was done, he just said, "You know she's threatened by you, right?" I blinked. "What?" "Your mom. She sees you becoming someone she can't control. So she's trying to drag you back down to the version she could control. The scared kid who asked if he was embarrassing in public. She doesn't know how to handle confident you." I hadn't thought about it that way, but it made sense. After that, things started to shift inside me. I started showing up a little earlier. Spoke with more certainty in meetings. Didn't second-guess my decisions as often. When a colleague made a snide remark in passing about needing help on the social side, I didn't laugh it off or take it personally. I just looked him in the eye and said, "Is that your way of asking for coaching?" He shut up real quick. At home, I added to the receipts folder every few nights. Not obsessively, just enough to keep myself grounded. I dug up old emails, texts, Facebook posts, even some awkward childhood videos she'd uploaded without my permission under captions like, "Always a little awkward, but still mine." Each one was a piece of the puzzle. Each one made the full picture clearer. It wasn't about revenge, not yet. It was about knowing I wasn't imagining it. Then, something unexpected happened. My younger cousin, Drew, reached out. He messaged me on Facebook, something short. "Hey, I saw your mom's post a few weeks ago. Just wanted to say." I didn't believe it. I asked him what he meant. He said, "She made it sound like you're ungrateful. But I remember how hard you worked. You tutored me through algebra when she told me I was dumb." I never forgot that. I hadn't spoken to Drew in almost 5 years. But that one message felt like a crack in the wall. Over the next week, 3 more people reached out. Old friends, distant relatives. People who had seen Eleanor's posts, maybe liked them at first, but who were beginning to connect dots. They'd seen this pattern before, in how she talked about other family members. About them, even. One of them, an old friend of my mom's from church, sent me a screenshot. A comment my mom had made under one of her own posts, replying to someone who asked why I hadn't liked or commented on her tribute. She'd written, "He's always been emotionally cold, probably from the trauma of growing up different. He lashes out sometimes. I still love him. Cold. Lashes out. Emotionally unstable." It was all building a narrative. Not just that I was difficult, but that she was the victim. That loving me was some kind of burden. That everything I'd ever accomplished had been in spite of myself. Thanks only to her patience. And suddenly I saw it for what it was. She wasn't just trying to control me. She was erasing me. That's when I made a decision. No more silence. No more letting things slide because she's still my mom. No more protecting her image at the cost of my own peace. Christmas was coming. And apparently, I had an invitation. And this time, I planned to attend. But not as her son. As someone she could no longer rewrite. As someone who'd finally decided that survival wasn't enough. It was time to rise. The invitation came in the form of a group email. Subject line: Christmas dinner. Family is everything. It was sent to 27 people. Extended relatives, family friends, neighbors who'd known us since I was in grade school. And me. Always me. Right in the middle of the list, like I was just another friendly face being welcomed home, not the son she'd publicly humiliated in front of coworkers, gaslit through passive-aggressive social media posts, and framed as emotionally unstable to half the family tree. The body of the email was full of sugary sentiment. Classic Eleanor. A time for healing, she called it. Let's set aside pride and hurt feelings and come together for what really matters, family. A few passive phrases slipped in for flavor, like life is too short to hold grudges, and let's all show Felix that love isn't conditional, even when things get tough. Conditional. The irony nearly made me laugh. She was painting herself as the bigger person, again, positioning this dinner as an olive branch, like she was welcoming me back into the fold. But it wasn't for me. I saw it clearly now. It was for the audience, for the image. She wanted to be seen forgiving me, not privately, publicly, to a room full of people who would take her side unless I gave them reason not to. So I replied, short, polite, measured. Thank you for the invitation. I'll be there. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a flourish. No emojis. No emojis meant she couldn't screen capture my message and frame it as either too cold or too eager. I wasn't giving her that foothold. Then I called Julia. I need a favor, I said. Julia hesitated for maybe half a second. Tell me what you need. I'd like to bring a guest to the Christmas dinner. You. There was a long pause on the other end. Then, you want me to go with you? As your shield? I smiled. As my witness. She laughed once. Oh, Felix. This is going to be fun. For the next 2 weeks, I prepared. Not out of paranoia, but strategy. I knew how my mother operated now. She didn't attack directly. She planted things. Hints, rumors, little seeds of doubt that blossomed once she stepped away. She relied on everyone around her to finish the job she started. She never said I was unstable. She said she was worried. She never said I was ungrateful, just that she was so proud despite my distance. She never said I didn't earn my job, just that she was so thankful someone finally saw past my challenges. I couldn't expose her with rage. She thrived in that. It would make me look exactly like the version of me she was trying to sell. No, I needed calm, poise, proof. So I made copies. Printed versions of every email, every social media post, every message she'd sent to my coworkers, every private text she'd forwarded to family. I organized them into a single black folder, labeled simply, Timeline. Each one had a date, a context, and, if needed, a small annotation from me. Not explanations, just facts. Let the pattern speak for itself. I didn't intend to share it. Not yet. But I needed to have it. Not as a weapon. As armor. The second part of the setup was the guest list. I'd always let my mother control the room. Who got invited, who got seated where, who got praised loudly, and who got quietly minimized. She liked to hold court, always placing herself at the center of every table. If I was going to make this dinner my turning point, I needed to disrupt the seating chart. I called my cousin Drew. I want you next to me at dinner, I said. Front and center. Drew didn't even hesitate. Done. I called my sister. You too. Don't worry, she said. I already told her I'm bringing my own +1. She's annoyed, which means I'm doing something right. I called Evan. I called Samantha. 2 of my closest coworkers, both of whom had read Eleanor's gratitude post and seen through the performance. They weren't just work friends anymore. They were believers. Are you sure? Samantha asked when I invited her. That sounds intense. It will be, I said. But I want people there who know the real me. Julia confirmed a few days later. I rearranged my schedule. I'll be there. And don't worry, I won't make it obvious. I'll blend in. Smile politely. Maybe take mental notes for the memoir I'll eventually write about all this. I appreciated the levity. But I wasn't under any illusions. This wasn't just a dinner. It was a stage. And Eleanor Kane never stepped onto a stage without a script. Christmas Day arrived with clear skies and a quiet chill. I dressed sharp. Not flashy, just precise. Navy blazer, pressed shirt, subtle watch. Not trying too hard. Just solid. I needed to look like the man she kept telling everyone I wasn't. Julia met me outside the house. She wore a soft green coat and the kind of expression that made it clear she'd been to dinners like this before, just maybe not with someone's mother as the main antagonist. You ready? She asked. I've never been readier. We walked in together. Eleanor was already in full hostess mode. apron over her designer blouse, wine glass in hand, air-kissing cousins, and complimenting dresses she didn't mean. When she saw me, her expression froze just for a second, just long enough for me to see it, the calculation. "Felix," she said, voice dripping with sugary warmth. "You came." She turned to Julia. "And you must be the famous Julia. My son talks about you so much." "Well, not recently, but you know how he is." I shook Julia's hand like we'd just bumped into each other by chance. "Thanks for coming. Mom, we'll find our seats." I walked right past her, left her standing there holding a plate she hadn't meant to hold. It was a small thing, but it was the first time I'd ever walked into that house and felt taller than her. The dining room was full, too full. She'd clearly over-invited, hoping for an audience. Everyone was dressed like they were posing for a Christmas catalog. Fake laughter bounced off the walls like ornaments clinking together. Drew was already at the table, nodding toward the seat beside him. My sister sat across from us, smirking. Julia took the seat next to me. Evan and Samantha filled out the rest of the row. We didn't talk strategy. We didn't need to. The mere presence of these people, the ones who knew, was enough. It tilted the balance, made it harder for her to perform unchallenged. Dinner started. Eleanor opened with a toast. "To forgiveness," she said, looking straight at me, "and to choosing love over pride." There were murmurs of agreement around the table. My aunt clinked her glass. A few cousins nodded, unsure but unwilling to break the mood. I didn't toast. I didn't speak. And when the silence after her words started to stretch just a little too long, Julia stepped in with a graceful save. "To family," she said, "and to people who show up even when it's hard." Another round of clinks. This time, the energy shifted slightly, like someone had moved the centerpiece and no one could quite place what was different. Eleanor smiled, but her eyes scanned the table with quick flicks. She knew. She knew something was off. She just didn't know what, yet. The rest of dinner was a balancing act. She tried, several times, to guide the conversation back toward her narrative. Little jabs disguised as memories. Comments like, "Felix was always so sensitive to criticism. Even as a baby, you should have seen the tantrums. I remember when he got his first job and called me crying because he thought his boss didn't like him. Sometimes I wonder if he'd even eat it all if I didn't remind him to." Each one was subtle, small, calibrated for plausible deniability. But each time, someone at the table pushed back, gently but firmly. "Drew, you mean when he was tutoring me while working full-time?" "Samantha, I've seen Felix handle more pressure than anyone else on our team. If that's sensitive, sign me up." "Julia, it's funny, you describe a totally different person than the one I promoted." My mother's smile never cracked, but her fingers tightened around her wine glass. I wasn't fighting her. I wasn't even speaking, but she was losing. The real turning point came when my dad stood up after dessert. He wasn't a dramatic man. He barely raised his voice, even when I broke a window playing baseball in the driveway at age 9. But that night, he said something I'll never forget. "I just want to say something," he began. "I've watched Felix grow into a man I'm proud of. And I think sometimes, pride can be quiet. It doesn't have to be wrapped in stories or posted online or shared like a trophy." He looked directly at Eleanor. "Sometimes, pride just means stepping back and letting someone speak for themselves." Then he sat down. And for the first time that night, maybe the first time in years, Eleanor had no words. She tried to smile, but it faltered, because the room wasn't hers anymore. Not completely. And the story she'd spent months crafting? It had cracks, and I had just started learning how to widen them. My mother didn't know it yet, but Christmas night was the last time she'd ever get to weaponize a holiday against me. After dinner, people shifted into the living room, plates of pie balanced on laps, wine glasses refilled, fireplace flickering in the background like a staged movie set. My mother had changed into softer lighting, lit a cinnamon-scented candle, and put on her favorite cozy but curated playlist. Everything was going according to her plan. It always did, until it didn't. She made her move casually. We were mid-conversation with a few family friends, Julia, my dad, my sister, and a neighbor named Mrs. Alden, when Eleanor stood in front of the fireplace and tapped a spoon against her wine glass. "If I could have everyone's attention just for a moment," she said, smiling. "I just want to say how proud I am to have my son here tonight. Felix has always been special." There was a light chuckle from somewhere in the room. She waited for it. Let it fill the space before continuing. "Now, We've had our bumps this year, haven't we? She said, glancing at me like we were in on a private joke. But I want to acknowledge how hard Felix works, even if he doesn't always see how much he's loved. There it was. The setup. Make herself the gracious one. Frame me as distant. Wounded, but tolerated. And then she said it. I know it hasn't been easy for either of us. But sometimes, growth comes from being challenged. And I've always pushed Felix because I see his potential, even if he forgets where he came from. A few people murmured awkward affirmations. My aunt clapped once. A scattered chorus of hum, and that's true, echoed around the room like lazy echoes in a canyon. I waited for the silence. Then I stood up. Mom, I said, thank you for your kind words. And since we're having a moment of family reflection, I think it's a perfect time for a bit of truth. Some of you already know what I'm talking about. Others don't. But I've stayed quiet long enough. The room went still. I'm not going to raise my voice. I'm not here to ruin Christmas. But I am here to correct the narrative. I pulled the black folder from my bag, the one labeled Timeline, and held it in my hand, firm and calm. I didn't walk out of that dinner because I'm sensitive. I walked out because my mother publicly humiliated me during one of the most important nights of my career in front of the people I work with by asking, loudly, if I got my promotion out of pity. Gasps. Some of them real. She didn't stop there. She then sent an email to my boss and colleagues. I have the printouts right here. The message implied I was socially challenged and only successful because people were kind enough to overlook that. She then posted about it on LinkedIn, tagging my company's page, spinning a story about how she never thought I'd make it in the workplace, but was grateful someone gave me a chance. I flipped open the folder. If anyone wants to read it, I'll leave it here. But I'm not here for a fight. I'm here for freedom. I turned to her. You don't get to rewrite my story anymore. Eleanor opened her mouth, closed it. The silence was thick. No one moved. For years, I've let you control the narrative. I continued. Let you frame me as the fragile one, the difficult one, the son who was always a little off. But I've had enough. This, I held up the folder. This is a record of a pattern. Years of small cuts disguised as love. Years of performance dressed up as concern. Her lips parted again, but I raised a hand gently. Let me finish. The room held its breath. I'm not asking for sympathy. I don't need anyone to take sides. I've built a good life, a great career, wonderful friendships, despite the obstacles, not because of them. And the only reason I'm saying this now is because I will not let another year go by pretending everything is fine. It's not. I turned to Julia, who was watching with quiet pride. Then to my dad, who gave the faintest nod. You're no longer allowed to use my silence as proof you're right. My sister stood up, quietly walked to me, and placed her hand on my shoulder. Then Julia rose, walked to the folder, flipped it open, scanned the email. Yep, she said. This is the one. She sent it to all of us. I never responded because I didn't want to dignify it. A few murmurs spread across the room. People were shifting now, uncomfortable. Eleanor's voice finally found its way through the stillness. Felix, I think you're being very dramatic. No, I said, clear but soft. I'm being specific. She paused. Her face changed, realizing that tone wasn't rage. It was resolve. And then Samantha stepped forward. From the back of the room, I saw the LinkedIn post. My mom is a therapist. She read it and said, this isn't pride. This is projection. So I'm just saying it wasn't subtle. That was the crack. The one that broke the dam. Drew followed. She did it to me too, you know. Back when I failed my driving test. She told Aunt Marie I was probably dyslexic. I didn't even have dyslexia. More people nodded. Stories started to emerge. Things that hadn't been said aloud in years. Moments that had been shrugged off, brushed aside, normalized. Now, they sounded different. Like what they really were. Control. Undermining. Narrative shaping. Eleanor sat down. She wasn't smiling now. Just small. Quiet. Still clutching her glass of wine, but not drinking it. Her eyes darted around like she was trying to find someone, anyone, still on her side. But they weren't there. Not this time. By the end of the night, people had thanked me. Quietly, privately. Said things like, I never saw it before, and you were brave to say something. Not performative, not loud. Just honest. Before I left, I took the folder and walked over to my mother. I didn't drop it. I didn't shove it at her. I set it on the coffee table. You can keep it, I said. Maybe read it sometime. Not to defend yourself. Just to see. She didn't respond. I turned and walked out. My sister, Julia, and I rode back to the city in silence for a while. Eventually, Julia turned to me. "You okay?" I smiled, for real this time. "Yeah," I said. "For the first time in a long time. I think I am." In the following weeks, things changed. My mom's online activity dried up. No new posts. No vague quotes. No backhanded compliments. She'd been exposed, and not through cruelty, through truth. The kind of truth that doesn't shout. It just exists. People treated me differently, too. Not because they pitied me, but because they saw the full picture now. They understood that surviving someone's narrative isn't a sign of weakness. It's a testament to strength. I started speaking at small leadership conferences. Not about family. About resilience. Boundaries. What it means to lead with authenticity in a world full of noise. And one day, standing at the front of a room filled with young professionals, I ended my speech with this. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say is nothing. But if your silence becomes someone else's weapon, it's time to take back the story. The applause was real. So was the peace. And that was the final chapter. Not revenge through destruction, but through liberation. The story didn't end with a scream. It ended with a folder, a voice, and a choice. Mine. I didn't just walk away from her. I walked into myself, and I never looked back.